Okay, good.
That's why he did his hair.
Sometimes he sneaks up. You're just jealous.
That's right.
Because you don't have any?
I'm jealous.
I don't either.
Thank you. You saw what I just posted.
I saw your poll. Yeah.
Right. Everybody voted for a beard, but I had about a third of the people vote for me to do a hair transplant.
Bring back the hair.
I don't think hair transplants actually work that well. I don't know though.
No, they wouldn't. But if my hair looked like it did in that photo,
yeah,
bro.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to keep my hands off you. That's for sure. But I don't know about anybody else.
It's so weird.
Hey, today's podcast, let's just jump right in. We are going to talk about testosterone. This is a huge topic. It feels like a lifetime that Dave has been researching this and annoying the shit out of me every day about it. Maybe I should do it. Maybe I shouldn't. Blah, blah, blah. So I think through all of his research, he's come to a conclusion. We're going to dive in. We've got Travin. He's the owner of REVV Health. That's REVV. And they do hormone optimization for men and women. So we brought an expert in, and we are going to dive in. It's a very nuanced subject. There's a lot to it. So we're going to dive in. Stick around. We got lots of great information. Where to start? Well, I'm on TV.
Do your introduction. Let's go. A special guest.
Yeah. No, you did. So, I mean, just for my personal experience, and I will chip in as much as possible here on my experiences with it. I've been on testosterone for over a year now. I wish I had found it when I was working graveyards as a cop, because I'm sure my numbers were in the dumps. I imagine a lot of your clients come from the first responder world.
Absolutely.
Because it like messing with your sleep cycle is probably one of the number one things that can jack up your T levels, I would guess. Mm-hmm. I'm no expert.
For sure. Well, let's start with this. Travin, tell us about REVV Health, how you got into this, what exactly you guys do.
Yeah. So like Seth said, we do hormone optimization for both men and women. Kind of just like anything else, it's kind of my own personal story that got me here. So I'm 41 now. Back when I was around 30 years old, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's. So what that does is it basically, your body releases these antibodies that attack your thyroid. And over time, your thyroid function just reduces lower and lower and lower until you aren't producing sufficient enough thyroid hormones. And so, what a lot of people don't realize, so low thyroid symptoms almost identically mirror low testosterone symptoms. So things like, fatigue, brain fog, low energy, inability to lose weight, can't put on muscle, those things like that. So, it's something that gets overlooked a lot in men in general, thyroid conditions. But I was diagnosed with this disease in my early 30s. It's crazy because I'd always worked out. I was active. I looked healthy on the outside, but it happened so quick. It was like within the course of a year, I just didn't want to do anything. Like I didn't want to go do things with friends. I didn't want to work. I didn't have like motivation for anything. So I finally worked my way up to going to the doctor because we're men. We hate going to the doctor for anything. So finally go in there. It's just my primary care doctor. So she diagnoses me with this condition, puts me on what turns out to be the wrong type of medication. I spend probably the next 5 or 6 years, bouncing around to different doctors, putting on different medications, adjusting my dose up, down. And I never felt better. I actually felt worse throughout this whole time because it ended up being the wrong medication. And so I finally, got connected with a doctor that took care of me, as best as I had so far, got that dealt with. Then it kind of dove into the whole testosterone side of things when I was around 37, 38. But, it took me about 8 years to get to that point, and a lot of time, a lot of money, right? And a lot of just, wasted time and feeling like crap. So it was, kind of just out of a need of how can we, my partner, she kind of went through her own health struggles along the way too, and hormone stuff. And so we kind of thought, how can we just bring together a platform that makes, hormone optimization accessible, easily accessible to men and women. So we're telemedicine based. So everything's done online. And it's just a super streamlined, easy process. Our providers are, experts in hormone therapy. They're trained. They're very, well educated and just have a lot of experience in doing this. So I think, what you guys have maybe found since, you're on testosterone, you've been doing all kinds of research.
Yeah, if you look at the two of us, who's on testosterone and who's not?
That little vein in my arm tells me everything I need to know, Dave.
Yeah. Well, it's the beard too.
Is there okay, first of all, I'm starting to grow out a beard. Is there a direct correlation between people on testosterone on their forearms?
Well, vascularity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it increases vascularity.
It absolutely increases vascularity. And guys will see that too. Obviously it kind of it helps with working out too. And sometimes it'll get people back in the gym, but it helps with building muscle. But yeah, absolutely. It increases vascularity.
So when I was in the fire department, I mean, we had a lot of guys that went on testosterone, and it's been, this is what's good about talking about this. You know, I did those Facebook posts where I connected with you because you saw my post about that, is that I don't really care if you're on it or not, but a lot of people are either ashamed of saying they're on it, or they're nervous about telling people, or it's just, you know, it's private. They don't want people to know. But I look at it as, hey, if it's something that's helping change your life and it's something that you want to do that's going to make you feel healthy and give you more vigor and you're going to be in a better place, then why not? So that's really the purpose of this is, you know, but we see guys in the fire department and I'm looking at their forearms. I'm like, bro, I know you're on something. All I got to do is look at your forearms. And I'm like, that looks different than it did 6 weeks ago.
Well, dude,
this is weird.
That's exactly why I reached out to you. I don't even think I'd ever talked to you in person before.
Nope.
We were friends on Facebook, you know, for whatever reason. And I saw your post about testosterone and there's tons of engagement and comments. And that's why I reached out, because it's like, you weren't promoting it. You're not on it. You're just sharing your thoughts, your experience, what you found. And it's cool because there isn't a lot of people talking about it and just, you know, openness and education. And some guys are even almost like embarrassed to say that
it's like very, very much like the mental health conversations these days. It's there's almost a stigma around it, which obviously I'm super open about it. I always have, I don't care. I've been open about mental health too. So, but you know, it's funny you say that guys in the fire department were on it. I didn't know anybody in my department that openly talked about it. You know, I didn't even think, it wasn't even on the radar.
So there were ways that I knew also there were other things going on that led to conversations where we knew what people were doing, but then you saw more and more people starting to take, and you're like, hold on here. But yeah, it was never openly talked about. Nobody ever walked in and was like, hey, I'm on testosterone. But I think, you know, when people hear it, they think of steroids. They think of things like that. Yeah. And it's got a negative connotation. And to be honest, I don't care if you're on steroids either. If you're making that choice for your body, then you go right ahead.
You do you. I wonder why that stigma even is. Is it a personal ego thing? Like a guy doesn't want, it almost feels like a weakness, right?
Yeah.
Like the same way that I'm left-handed, it almost feels like a weakness.
It is.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's probably it, right? Like, oh, something's wrong with me. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, I think too, guys like pride themselves on being capable, right?
Yeah.
Like what dude asks for directions, right? We'll drive around and we'll be lost forever. So to say that you're getting a supplement that's helping you be this jacked person or this healthy person, let's just say that, I don't think guys want to say it. They want to take full credit for what they have and what they've done, and they don't want to admit that they're taking anything.
It's a total ego thing. And we have a lot of women patients, and a lot of times a woman will start with us and then she'll bring in her husband, right? She'll come and tell us like there's, you know, whether it's a libido thing or can't lose weight or whatever's going on, like I think he needs help. And the guy almost always in that situation is like, I know I don't need it. Like, I know my testosterone's great.
Yeah.
You know, we get his levels checked and it's like, you're like 350, dude. Like, like you're not.
My husband's fat and he's not into me.
Yeah. That's pretty much what they said. That's funny because that's how it went for me. My wife went in first and got on testosterone. She actually had an interesting route because they got her levels way too high. And
did you do the pellet?
Yeah, pellets. Yep. So they, for those that don't know, they take a pellet and they cut an incision right at the like lower back, upper ass area, and then insert these pellets in there, and their time release over months. I actually did that first too. Mm-hmm. It was not conducive to my lifestyle because I coached jujitsu. So like I cannot not be active for a long enough time.
Yeah.
And it was really painful, and it was like, screw that. So
yeah.
I got off that.
Yeah. It's not an optimal way to do things, at least in my opinion. You know, when you think about like what we're trying to do with bioidentical hormones is trying to replicate your body's natural production, you know, and that's basically over a 24-hour cycle. And when you think about these pellets, they're metabolized over the course of like 4 to 5 months versus, you know, if you're doing like, you know, 2 to 3 times a week injections or a daily cream or even the daily oral capsule, which you mentioned. I mean, you want to try to mimic that natural cycle as much as possible. And so what happens with pellets a lot of times, especially with men, because we metabolize them so much faster, it's like some guys will burn through them in 2.5 months. And then they have, you know, 6 to 8 weeks of feeling like garbage.
That happened to me too. Yeah. It was like, I knew when they wore off and I was like, I felt like dog shit for weeks. And I was like, this is not sustainable.
That's not something I want. And that's why I hear like a lot of times injections, people now do them twice a week or 3 times a week because it just stabilizes a little better.
Yeah.
Yep.
Huge.
Absolutely.
That's what I went to. I ended up going to the injections. I started out once a week and now I do them twice a week.
Yeah.
And it's just like everything's level.
Yeah, that's perfect. We'll never start anyone on fewer than twice a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Travin, you guys being small business, that's a big part of like our heart and everything else is just supporting small business and local business here in Coeur d'Alene. So talk to me about, I told you, I've gone to 4 different clinics. Okay. And as Seth continues to complain, I've tried this for too long. So after leaving law enforcement, I realized that I had adrenal fatigue and low T and the symptoms that go along with it. More importantly, that I wanted to find a natural way to do it. Everything from Shilajit to ashwagandha to, sleep cycles, drinking water, eating healthy, all these different things. And granted, I will say my numbers have gone significantly up. But I think I get caught on numbers a lot, right? Because it's still how you feel. I still have a lot of that sluggishness and everything else. So Travin, when I went to some of these places, and I told you before, and I'm not going to name any, but some of these places I went to, I just felt sold. I didn't like the decision to give me testosterone was made before I ever walked in the door, before I was ever evaluated. And I felt that through the evaluation and how quick the process was. I didn't like that. So what's your process?
Well, so, I mean, just to hit on that real quick, any of these places, because there's a ton of them popping up now. And I almost hate to even be associated with, we're so much more than just a TRT clinic. That's what a lot of these places are. And, any place that goes in and they require you to have these other ancillary medications to go along with your testosterone therapy, I mean, that should be a huge red flag.
What kind of stuff like DIM?
So most of these places will do like an estrogen blocker, like an Astrazole or Arimidex, which is, that should probably be your biggest red flag. If a place is telling you that you need to block your estrogen on testosterone therapy, that's the number one sign that they probably don't understand the medical literature.
And why is that?
So testosterone works through its active metabolites, right? Estradiol and DHT. So if you're blocking estradiol, you're literally blocking half the benefits of your testosterone. And so not only are you doing that, but you're also, when you have low levels of estradiol, you're putting yourself at risk for cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's disease, diabetes, prostate cancer, colon cancer. So all the medical literature shows, I mean, we have decades of research now that show us anytime you block estrogen, it shows harm. And every time that you give testosterone and it shows benefit, you do not block estrogen. So if you follow the evidence, right, you should never block your estrogen.
So how do you deal with somebody that has, because I know that we talk a lot about the ratio of estradiol and testosterone. So when you have somebody that maybe that ratio is a little too close, how do you deal with it? So
if you're doing, like we talked about the injection frequency, if you're doing like 2 or more injections, your levels are going to be pretty stable most of the time. So you're not really ever going to deal with that. Like those, if you're doing 1 big injection a week, like you might have some issues with a spike and a crash. But if you think about it this way, like when we were young, when we were teenagers, early 20s, and we had these robust testosterone levels, did we worry about blocking estrogen then?
No,
it wasn't a thing. Right. So it's like this whole notion of like, it really comes from the bodybuilding community. I think, people that are using a lot of synthetic, derivative compounds that, and they block estradiol for those reasons. But in the world of like testosterone therapy, bioidentical hormones, there's never a need to do that.
Yeah. I don't think I produced a lot of testosterone as a kid. I was like 150 pounds and
eating Doritos.
Yeah.
Maybe
that had an effect.
So when I started, I was taking, it's called DIM, D-I-M. Same thing, right? Okay. And then I talked to my buddy, Eric Fody. Do you know Eric?
I know Eric. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He's fine with me talking about this because we've talked about it on this podcast before. And he's been on T for a long time. And he's like, I don't take any estrogen blockers. And I was like, really? And I was like, well, I don't want to do that either. It's just one more thing that I have to pay for and I take. And I didn't even know about the health issues. So I finally got my dose like dialed in. It took me a long time to get it just dialed in where I don't need to take them anymore. It's been like, I'm freaking really happy about that.
Yeah.
Just one less thing to take.
Yeah.
So I know you're not the end all on a lot of this stuff, but obviously you have quite a bit of knowledge and experience with all this stuff. So why? I'm very much Joe Rogan it here.
Oh, yeah.
And just keep asking questions. Why is it then that clinics are out there adding estrogen blockers if it's really not to benefit?
I have a guess. Can I guess?
Sure.
Is it they make more money selling that shit too?
So yeah, I mean, it's a combination of that and or they just don't understand the medical literature.
Because the place I was going to, they would push their own supplement line. Like, oh, you can get it here. It's 4 times as much as I can find it somewhere else. But and I was like, I don't like that.
So the other component of that, what a lot of these clinics will do is they'll use HCG. Are you guys familiar with HCG?
Human chorionic gonadotropin?
Yeah. So
what?
You heard it.
Say that again.
I like big words. Human chorionic gonadotropin.
There you go.
So a lot of these places will try to, upsell or add this in, or they'll even say it's mandatory that you have to do this alongside testosterone. So the reason is, so HCG the thought is it will keep your natural production stimulated while you're on testosterone therapy.
Yep. Okay.
There's really not a need, in my opinion, to use it outside of like fertility reasons. Like if you're on testosterone, just be on testosterone. There's no point in keeping your natural production simultaneously while you're taking exogenous testosterone. But these places will try to upsell you, and it's not cheap. It's like $250 a month sometimes for this HCG, but they'll, any place that's trying to say that, okay, you have to take this along with your testosterone, that's just to me a huge red flag.
Can we talk about numbers a little bit? Cause that's like really the indicator of if you even need to be on it. So I got my T tested back in 2013. I was working shift work. I think I was on swing shift at the time. And I went to my normal doctor and he tested my levels. I don't remember what they are at. I think they were probably in the 400s. And he's like, "You're fine." Like, I was like, "Sure." And he's like, basically his question was, sorry, ladies. He's like, "Do you get morning wood?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And he's like, "You're good then." And I was like, "Okay." That was it. No more conversation. Like I couldn't push the issue with him, nothing. And I was like, "All right, I guess we're done here." But I've come to find out those are actually pretty low.
Yeah.
And, when I got tested last year, it was low 500s and they put me on testosterone. And now my levels are quite a bit higher. But what's the standard?
Yeah. So, you guys have both said it, right? I hate getting caught up on numbers too, right? Because so many people like to focus on this. And it's like, when you look at the range, so most people use, like LabCorp, Quest, or the two big labs. And so when you're talking about the range of testosterone, let's use LabCorp, it's 264 to 916 is their normal range.
Big range.
Right? Yeah, big range. A guy at 265 does not feel the same as a man at 900 at all. But they will look at that. A lot of, at least primary care doctors will look at that and go, "Oh, you're still in this normal range. Like you're okay." And then the other part of it too is then you have a lot of guys that come in that might be like, let's say 4 or 5, even 600 and say, "Well, I'm right in the middle of that range. Like I'm okay." Or let's say if you're in 600, you're like, "Well, okay, I'm better than midway. I'm better than average." Well, 25 years ago, that scale went all the way up to almost 1600. And then in 2017, it was changed. It was at 1200, 2017, and it's changed then to now 916. So what's happening is
we are becoming women.
Well, it's clear our testosterone levels are becoming lower and lower. And so instead of just saying, "Okay, let's acknowledge this problem, let's correct it," we're just adjusting the scale down to basically normalize the deficiency. So where you're looking at now, you're like 500, 600, I'm in the middle. Okay, well, if that scale went up to 1600, would you still feel that way? Or would you say, "Fuck, like I'm quite a bit lower than where I should be"?
Well, that's how we do everything now. We just lower the standard. Right?
Yeah.
We don't actually
That's exactly right.
The normalization of deviance. I love that.
So do we know why testosterone? So basically what you're saying is testosterone levels in men have been declining for decades. Do we know why?
So I think, the endocrine disrupting chemicals, right? A lot of the microplastics, toxins, pesticides, herbicides, that kind of stuff. Obesity has gone way up, so that's another big thing that contributes to the low testosterone levels. I would say those two things, like the endocrine disruptors, everything in our environment, all the contamination, and then obesity rates are probably the two main causes of it.
Got it.
And obviously, if you're thinking about getting on testosterone, you should do all the other stuff first. You should eat right, lose weight. Like if you're overweight, it's not a cheat. It's like, if you do all these other things, like Dave does all of these things, right? Like he works out, he eats right most of the time.
Not this past week. This past week.
And if you're doing all of that and it's still not getting you where you want to be feeling wise, right? Like we said, numbers aren't necessarily the indicator here. How you feel, then it might be a time to explore this as an option.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that too, because I don't want sometimes people do mistake that and say, "Okay, well, let's just hit the easy button and go to testosterone."
Yeah.
Like, I feel like those things you said kind of go without saying. Like those should be a given. Everyone should be doing that stuff already. We should all be focusing on our diet, exercise, work on our sleep and those things. But, you get like, I was listening to one of your guys' podcasts, the one that you had a lady on talking about her cancer story, and your wife was on too.
Yeah, Nancy.
Yep. You were talking about how having like digestion issues, and you eat really good, and you were even talking about your buddies would give you crap like, "Oh, you eat good, but you're still having some of these issues." Sometimes it's not enough. Sometimes we can do everything right, and it's still not enough to overcome whatever's going on.
And I think that's something that why a lot of people have tuned in with what I've been talking about this testosterone for the past couple of months, is because I really feel like I have tried, like I said, I've had positive results. Don't get me wrong. And I'm very much a person that would rather supplement over medicate. I don't like being dependent on things, right? I tease him all the time and I'm like, oh man, just wait. I'm when the testosterone runs out and we have, everything goes to crap. And I'm over here with my, 240 testosterone and you drop down to
like
100,
like a shrill little.
Yeah. You'll be my little lady.
Well, that's a misconception.
So that's what I was going into.
About that.
Let's do it.
I want to get into that. Real quick though, before we get there, like you did all the right stuff, but you also worked shift. I mean, Dave was, how long were you a firefighter?
15 years in that, 2 years in law
right.
enforcement.
You slept like shit.
Yeah.
I know, even though I give firefighters crap, you didn't sleep much. And then he was a cop for 2 years. Like you've done that for so long. Even if you're doing all the right stuff, your sleep schedule's been whacked, dude. Like it has big impact.
Sleep and stress. Absolutely. I mean, those two things can hammer it down for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Okay.
Well, let me ask you something too, what you said. And so you made the comment about supplement over medicate and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So here's what I always say to people that say that. So when we're talking about testosterone and everything we do is bioidentical hormones, right? So what we're talking about is a plant-derived, natural, bioidentical molecular compound to what your body naturally produces versus a supplement, right? That you're taking things that might have artificial ingredients in them. You don't know exactly what's in them. It's not regulated. So sometimes I would make the argument that the testosterone, the hormones, is more natural than even a supplement-based product, And so sometimes I think people kind of think about, because it's a prescription, they'll call it a medication or a drug, and I don't call it either of those things. It's a natural bioidentical hormone. And so I think that's where the difference is. And sometimes it's hard to get your head around, okay, it's a prescription, it's coming from a pharmacy, right? It's a medication or it's a drug.
Yeah. And that's so, and I agree with you. And I think that's good. And a lot of my supplementation has been trying to supplement things that are natural, right? Between food and stuff like that. What are the B vitamins that I need? What type of food do I need for this? These types of things. What are the natural producers? So that's been a lot of my supplementation. But so, my big fear, right? This is the big thing. And I'll be honest with you. I have, like I said, I've been evaluated by 4 different clinics. I've talked to hundreds of people probably about this, and I've researched online extensively. And I'll be honest with you. I still don't have an across the board conclusive response from the community on what actually happens here. When you go on testosterone and you are on external testosterone, you're taking it as a supplement. Does your body have the ability to reproduce testosterone if you come off of it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road?
Yeah, it will return to its baseline. So what happened, and it'll take 2 to 3 months, typically, is from what all the literature says, but you will return to a baseline. So yes, when you're taking exogenous testosterone, your body creates a negative feedback loop and it stops producing its own testosterone. But when you come off of that, you will return to a baseline. Now, will that baseline be what it was when you started? That's going to be dependent on how long you were on the testosterone. And it's not necessarily a factor of, okay, the testosterone damaged my natural production. It's a factor of, how much have I aged? What would my normal baseline have been?
So at 40 years old right now, if I'm at 500, I can expect at 50 years old, I might be at 400 if I come off then.
Again. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
But so your research says that you will go back to your natural testosterone.
You will return to a baseline testosterone.
They're still higher than yours.
I have a theory here, and what I'm doing is I'm stockpiling a 3-month supply. So if the supply chain gets cut off due to whatever, I've got 3 months to establish dominance. And then after that, I don't know what will happen, but I'll have established.
I'll be there for you.
Yeah, then you can get my back, bro, because I'll shrivel up. But yeah. Can we talk about some of the negative side effects? I can personally share, your nuts shrank. Sorry, ladies. We're 96% men that listen to this podcast. So
yeah.
I'll tell you though, a lot of women, that's not necessarily a negative thing.
Well, they don't have nuts, right? Oh yeah. Oh, I see. Yeah.
They don't necessarily view that as a bad thing like we do.
I asked my wife.
They just get in the way.
She's like, I don't really care at all.
Yeah.
So, okay. Fair enough. Some guys actually worry about that. Like it's an ego.
They
thing.
do.
Like, how often do you let other dudes check your nut size? I don't. So, not really a big concern of mine, but, and is that because the natural, that's what creates the testosterone in your body. So they're not producing as much.
Atrophy. They're not working. Yeah. They're an organ and, it stops working, it shuts down. It just atrophies like
Don't you just know this? Your luteinizing hormone goes down. It stops sending signals. They stop working. They get smaller. I mean,
lay it on me.
It's just common knowledge.
Honestly, my wife's had them for years now, so I don't even know.
You don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You know, let's real quick to luteinizing hormone. When I sat down with you, a lot of my levels were normal, right, within that range. But he also noticed that my luteinizing hormone was high. You have more of an explanation? I mean.
Yeah. So it's kind of like, your body. So your luteinizing hormone is the signal from your pituitary basically to your testes saying produce hormone, produce testosterone, right? So when we see a situation where it's elevated like that, it can typically mean, okay, your body's ramping up production of that luteinizing hormone because it's not getting enough of the testosterone it needs. So it's screaming like, hey, we need more testosterone, and it's pushing it out. So usually what that can be indicative of is if, so there's primary hypogonadism and secondary hypogonadism. So primary is when your balls basically stop producing as much as they can. But secondary, it's more of a pituitary issue. You're not sending sufficient enough gonadotropins to your testicles to produce it. So, in a case where the LH,
you don't have to worry about HIPAA too. You have authorization to talk about my medical.
Well, yeah, you brought it up.
Go for it. That's fine.
So that's typically what that means is like, and so what I told you that day is sometimes when you get to that point where, your balls are not producing as much as they should, there's really not a lot. You need testosterone at that point. There's not a lot you can do naturally to get it to produce sufficient enough amounts.
So that was what I had. I mean, everything kind of came across normal, but my luteinizing hormone was extremely high, saying that I'm sending a bunch of signals trying to ask for more testosterone, but it's not happening.
Yeah. Interesting.
And we can get it, I think we all know like what the benefits are of having, optimal testosterone levels in terms of how you feel and quality of life. But a lot of people don't pay attention to the actual medical literature that shows all of the like protective benefits. So when you think about like aging and age-related disease, what do most people die from? Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's. So all these things are caused in large part by declining levels of hormones. And so, when you look at all of the, 8, 10, 11 year like long-term studies of testosterone, the guys in the testosterone group, are so much more healthier in terms of these age-related diseases than the non-treated testosterone.
I can prove that right now when you look at my childhood heroes, Stallone and Schwarzenegger. And those dudes are like 90 now, and they're freaking jacked. And you're like, all right,
yeah.
Enough said.
Yeah. And so like where I was going with that is, I think, anyone 40 and up pretty much, I think is a pretty good candidate for, you should really look at focusing on like make sure all of your hormones are optimized, right? And that's not to say younger guys, we have plenty of guys in their 30s that we work with and that we help. But just pretty much 40 and up, I think is that point where I would be worried about focusing on optimizing my hormones.
How many people do you have come to you that you look at them and you talk to them, and they're like, I want to go on T, and it's for an alternate purpose, right? They just want to get jacked.
So honestly, in our population of people, I do not see it that much. Really? I really don't. Most of the guys, there's been a couple guys that I can tell, and we just refused. In a polite way, we just don't work with them. I can tell like guys will reach out on social media, and I can tell that they're trying to like double dip or something. Yeah. And it's like, you can tell. And all these guys don't know, like you can't double dip. Like if you have a prescription for testosterone, like there's a database of controlled substance, you can't get another prescription provider for it. So, but guys don't know that. And you can kind of tell if that's the case, but it really doesn't happen that much. And we just don't work with them.
No, that makes sense. And I know, so I want to ask you a couple questions, and I think I talked to you about this. So I took some pro hormones. I believe they were labeled as pro. Now I can't find them. So I don't know what they were, but they're not available anymore. I took them back in 2018. Now I weighed 155 pounds. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I cannot believe that.
Yeah, I was 155 pounds. I look much bigger on here than you because you're tucked back.
Camera angles.
That's why we put the big guys in the back so that we look better. But no, I was 155 pounds. And then, now I'm 197. I came up here, but I did 3 cycles of this stuff. And it came with estrogen blocker, liver and kidney support. It was Centurion Labs M1 Alpha is what it was. And I remember taking it. It was 3 pills a day. My estrogen blockers morning and evening.
Something you just ordered online?
No, it was over the counter at a supplement store.
Okay,
yeah, 29 palms, man. They were selling it like crazy to Marines.
I bet.
Some jacked Marines out there. And I went and got this, my liver and kidney support. I had to take 9 pills a day. And I was on it. Like I was not the 1 pill's good, 2 pills are better guy. I did it exactly the way that it said. I drank a ton of water. I didn't drink alcohol. I didn't put other toxins in my body because it was explained to me it's a toxin. Like you're putting something toxic in your body. You need to cleanse it out. But God dang, did I get strong. Over the course of about a year, I gained about 40 pounds in muscle. I went from deadlifting like 200 pounds to like 450. And every day I went in the gym, I'm like, oh, let me try my max again. And I'm like, that wasn't that bad. I have a new max.
Yeah.
And, I did 3 cycles of this, month on, 2 months off. And but the crazy thing is like, I can attest, I don't feel like, maybe that's what jacked up my testosterone, I don't know, but I don't feel like I ever had a negative side effect. And I've retained about 95% of that strength. Yeah. What are those things?
Well, a lot of those have synthetic anabolics in them.
Oh,
you don't know it, but a lot of them do. And
so
there's been a lot of people have bought those products, had them tested, evaluated, and they find synthetic androgens in them. And they mix them in there. You don't know that they're in there, but that's how come they work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, it was incredible.
What, so the positive benefits, maybe we should touch on a little bit, because there might be some people out there that actually don't know. Mm-hmm. It's not all about getting jacked, right? Mm-hmm. For me, my personal experience is recovery. So I trained jiu-jitsu 3 days a week. I was getting like overly sore working out. I'd have injuries that would lag forever, and mostly that has gone away. That's the biggest one right now for me, is like my recovery time is a lot faster.
Yeah. That's the big one I hear a lot. For me personally, it's the mental aspects. Like I dealt with a lot of like brain fog and just mental fatigue and not depression, but just not excited, right? Like I used to be not motivated and didn't have that drive. And so for me, that's a lot of what changed, and you're right. A lot of people associate it with like working out in the gym, but that to me is I'd rather have all the other benefits over that personally, but when you ask, so typical like signs and symptoms of when we talk about low testosterone, libido, erectile dysfunction, fatigue, lack of energy, brain fog, low motivation, low drive. Those are kind of the main ones that we see.
Yep. I think that's another one that holds a lot of guys off from talking about it. Like guys that maybe have, erectile dysfunction or low libido. I think that's something that people are embarrassed to say.
Right. They don't want to come to somebody and be like, I got this going on.
Right. They're like, I can't perform and I can't do these things. And I think that's something that holds a lot of people back.
Yeah.
Because when I ask people, it's so often that I look at somebody, I'm like, dude, I know that you're on testosterone. I've seen how I can tell, right?
Yeah.
And they don't want to admit, which is fine. But I think that's one of the things that holds a lot of guys back.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do what I do. It's like, I know how much of an impact it made on my life. And it's like, I want to help people. I want to talk to guys. I want to help the guys, because people are like, you don't need to walk around and suffer with these things. They're easily treated. It's a hormone deficiency and we can just correct it. You don't have to live that
I'll
way.
tell you what, when I posted those videos, I had so many wives reach out to me and like, hey, dude, this will change my husband's life. Like, you really need to get on it. Yeah. I'm like, whoa, what is going on here? And I'm like, that's kind of, I guess you love it or hate it, whatever.
Yeah.
But I had a lot of wives reach out, and that was like their big thing. They're like, libido is so much better. Women were citing that of their husbands that are on it, and they weren't telling me they were on it.
Yeah.
It was their wives reaching out and be like, hey. So I think that's a shame. That's something that guys are nervous to talk about.
Yeah, that's one of the big things women know, because most of our women are on testosterone as well. And that's the big thing they notice, is like the libido part of it right away is huge for them. But it's a big reason why we encourage couples to do it together, right? Yeah. Because it like, you can imagine, it's funny to talk about, but it can kind of cause a problem. Let's say if you're used to this baseline, sexual level of sexual activity with you and your partner, and then all of a sudden one person gets on testosterone and libido shoots way up. And
once a week to twice a day.
And they're chasing everyone around. Yeah. And they want it all the time. And the other person's not at that level. It's uncomfortable. It's not ideal, and it can cause problems in a relationship. But man, we've had so many like husbands and wives that do it together, and they're like, oh my God, we're like teenagers again.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It's a pretty cool thing.
Funny. Yeah. It has caused a little bit of friction in my household, I'll be honest.
That's why we don't go on camping trips together.
Negatives. So, testicular shrink is not really a big thing, I don't think. But what are some of the other negatives?
So the typical, when we say side effects, like that's a given, like testicle shrinkage, that's going to happen. Acne and water retention, right, are the two things that guys will experience, and women can too. Those are the two things that can happen. And a lot of it, honestly, is due to diet. So the guys that we see affected by that stuff are guys that are eating a lot of processed foods, eating a lot of sugars. They're more insulin resistant. They got some inflammation things going on. And in the hormone, you're used to these low levels, and you ramp up your hormone levels and testosterone, and these changes can kind of flare up some of these issues. And so usually they're very transient, like they're temporary. They'll resolve after a few months of being on it. If not, we have some guys that we, have some things that they can do to kind of help their acne situation. But yeah, usually it's acne and water retention are the two main things. You know, in terms of like long-term side effects, it's all positives. I mean, all of the studies, all the long-term, health studies shows benefit.
I've had a lot of people ask me about prostate. I think there's a misconception out there that it's dangerous for the prostate. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that used to be the thinking for a long time. There was a Dr. Abraham Morgenthaler that started doing a lot of research on this. He's kind of like the guy that brought all this to light, but they came up with it's a saturation model of testosterone, and it has to do with the prostate. And so what they found is actually low levels of testosterone put you at more of a risk of prostate cancer than high levels of testosterone. So the only caveat is if you have active prostate cancer, then that would be a situation where you would not want to take testosterone. Okay. But it used to be, even if like, let's say you had a family history or you were at higher risk for prostate cancer, it would be a contraindication for testosterone. But we know now it's no longer the case.
I know, like for me personally, I do blood work quarterly, and they check, is it an enzyme in the prostate or something?
Yeah, like your PSA.
Yeah. That's it. They check that just to like routinely make sure nothing's changing there. Thankfully, we don't have to do it the old way like I did when I got joined the highway patrol.
Yeah.
The old
Dr. Finger.
Dr. Knuckles. Yeah. Anyway.
And then what about hemoglobin as well? I know a lot of people have to donate blood.
Good question.
While they're on testosterone.
Oh, that question came up. Well, I donated blood recently, and but they asked me, and I was like, "Oh yeah,
Another huge misconception. This is a hard one to talk to people about because there is such especially if you get online, and if you ever spend any time on like the forums or websites or anything like that, everyone will talk about donating blood, and the testosterone will give you thick blood. Well, so the reason that they think that is because, usually, especially with injectable testosterone, there will be an increase in your hemoglobin hematocrit. That's your red blood cell count, which is actually a good thing. I mean, you're delivering more oxygen to your blood, but what happens is it's got misunderstood with something called polycythemia vera, which is an increase in all of your platelet counts, right? And it can lead to blood clots. Well, what this is, it's termed secondary erythrocytosis, where it's just an increase in red blood cells. It's the exact same phenomenon that occurs to anyone that lives at high altitude. So we have 500 million people in the world that live at 7,000 or above altitude. They all have the same phenomenon. They don't have to donate blood. Okay. Anyone with sleep apnea has elevated RBCs. They don't have to donate blood, right? But somehow we think that if we're on testosterone and increase our red blood cells, we have to donate blood. But we always go by the literature. Every single study shows when you give testosterone, when you raise hemoglobin hematocrit, there's no risk. There's actually benefit.
I've always donated blood every few mons anyway. Like I usually do it twice or 3 times a year. I think the max is like every 3 months or something.
Yeah, you don't want to do it more than that. You can really like crush your iron levels and deplete your energy. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with donating blood, and it's a good thing. It helps people. It's great to do. It's just, that's another one of those things, just like we talked about the estrogen. The place is telling you that you have to donate blood on testosterone. That's another big.
So it's not a necessary thing. No. Have you ever done a double red blood cell donation?
No.
Oh, dude,
is that the one where they like take the blood? They do something?
I didn't like it because it went back in me, and I'm like,
freaks me out a little bit.
I did, and I didn't like it.
That's the one that it takes a while.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. Oh, like I'm always that guy that's like, all right, sit here for 15 minutes. I'm like, hey, what's that? And then I'm out the door. I'm like, whatever, and I feel fine. That will jack you up. You lose so many red blood cells. I mean, you go to run a mile, and you are like, you are out of breath. Yeah. It was pretty gnarly.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about like, did you watch that documentary with Lance Armstrong? No. And they do the blood doping and the cycles. Oh, yeah. That's what they're doing. They're trying to increase their red blood cells to increase their endurance. Yeah. It's not a bad thing, but we have this misconception that, there's so many guys that will say it's thick blood, and it's just not true.
Right.
Interesting. Okay. I want to talk about women and testosterone a little bit too. Cause, like I said, my wife is on it. I know quite a few women out there that are on it. Why are women taking it?
Same reason as men. I mean, all of the same side effects, or not side effects, but all the signs and symptoms of low testosterone that men experience. Same thing for women. And so, the issues with women, there's no clinical diagnosis of there's no low testosterone in women. So most doctors are going to think you're crazy if you're a woman and you're like, oh, can you check my testosterone level? I mean, so you really have to, go to a place that understands this, or work with a provider that understands this. But I mean, women feel great on testosterone, just like men do. Yeah.
My wife she might kill me. She won't listen to this. It's fine. When she got tested, she was like almost 0. And then the pellets got her like way too high. She was in the 200s at one point. And the downsides there are acne and hair loss for women. Like, there were some upsides for me. We'll talk about it off there. But the hair loss was like a real deal. I saw it. So she kind of got freaked out. Her levels got kind of out of whack for a bit, but now she's back.
Yeah, and it's the fluctuation is the big issue, like we talked about earlier. It's the pellet is going to be a big spike, initially, and for women it's usually too high.
Yep.
And then there's a drop, and then you go back down to almost zero, and then you go through this whole cycle again.
Why are people on that then?
Money.
That was my conclusion, is that the
convenience of just once a month?
The clinic makes more money selling that.
Yeah.
Am I right there?
Yeah. I mean, so it's actually a procedure that they do and they charge for it, right? And it's think about if you're a provider and you're not making money giving someone a testosterone prescription. Right. Here's the prescription for testosterone cream. Go fill it at the pharmacy. But if I can implant this pellet into you, and charge you $800.
Okay.
But it's just when you think, and I'm not saying there's look, I think it's better than nothing. I mean, if that was all I had available to me, I would do it. I would do it, but it's not an optimal way, in my opinion, to do it, because just you're having the fluctuations. And the other thing, especially with women, they experience this, is once they put that pellet in, it's in, they can't take it out. So if you spike your level and you're dealing with all these side effects, I mean, you literally have to ride it out for months.
Yep. That's exactly what we went through in my house. It was bad.
It's terrible. Yeah. And so there's just so many reasons. And then the scarring, like you think about, you're doing this incision 3 to 4 times a year over the next how many years. And so you get all these nasty scars, and it's just not a good way, in my opinion, to do it. I mean, there's so many more better options.
I think everybody would probably say that it's inconvenient at best, like any way that you do it. I mean, even doing pills, injection, it's just something that you go on a flight, you go somewhere for the weekend, you got to pack this stuff up. I mean, even taking supplements, you know what I mean? My B vitamins that I take, I hate having to put those in my, just take them with me, or, I decided to stay the night somewhere and then I don't have them. Not that I'm going to go down, but it's just
travel is an issue. Yeah. Even with me on the shots, like I have to time it, or I can take them with me. I can do that.
Yeah.
That is one benefit of the pellets, is that they're in and you don't have to worry about it. But for me, in our situation, they were not cool.
So we had mentioned earlier when we spoke, I've been doing a compounded testosterone cream for about 6 months, and I was doing injections for 2.5 years or so prior to this. And I had great experience with the injections, and great results. And then we have some patients we switched over to creams for various reasons. And so I tried it, and it actually got my levels much higher than the injections ever did. I actually I feel a lot better on the cream. And so when you talk about the traveling thing, I mean, it's almost like, it looks like a stick of deodorant almost. And it's super easy to travel with. And it takes 15 seconds, every morning to apply it. So it's not a big deal. It's just like brushing your teeth or doing anything else. But dude, it's
I need to check that out. That's interesting.
It's I mean, really great levels. And so we have a lot of guys that do it. It's a bit more expensive than injections, but it's well worth it, in my opinion. I love it.
So we got injections, we got oral, we got the pellets, we got the creams. What else is out there?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's for just testosterone. For women, they have some other options. There's suppositories, there's troches that they dissolve on their tongue.
Suppositories.
I told you that's a thing. Try that.
Yeah, in my opinion, I mean, really, it's injections or cream, or compounded cream, to me, are the two best ways to do it. I mean, we know that's going to get sufficient levels. You can make changes super easy.
Yep.
And it's just, it's a proven way to do it.
Any issue going back and forth between cream and injection?
I mean, I wouldn't recommend just constantly going back and forth. I mean, if you're, trying one for a while and then you decide, okay, I want to go back to the other. I mean, there's no issue, but it's just, ideally you'd want to just keep it, the half-life of the cream is 12 hours. So it's super fast acting. That's why you apply it daily. The injections, depending on how fast you metabolize it with Cypionate, it's anywhere from 4 to 7 to 8 days half-life. So they're a little bit different, mechanism there, but
is there risk with the cream of rubbing on somebody else?
Yeah. So in general, you kind of want to, you want to plan about 4 hours. And so that's where it can kind of get to be a pain. So 4 hours before contact, or even showering or getting wet, because you could wash it off. So it typically takes about 4 hours to get full absorption, all the hormones. So it's not the end of the world if you, let's say I shower at 2.5 or 3 hours. I mean, okay, whatever. I might not absorb as much that day as I normally would, but it's still, I mean, it pushes my levels up high enough. I mean, anyways.
So is that something for people who maybe have small kids or holding all the time? Or
exactly.
They sleep in bed,
you would want to do injections. Yep. Yeah. You would probably want to do injections, and that's recommended if you have small kids, and you're holding a lot, you probably want to do injections on that. Yeah.
I know that's always been, because I heard of androgel. I remember I had a guy offer me that years ago. He's like, oh, this will give you the edge. And I'm like, what is this stuff, dude? And then I read about it and it's like, oh, watch out. You can give your kids early puberty. And I'm like,
well,
no.
Dude, what I see with androgel usually is it actually gives guys a lower testosterone than before they even started, because it's just enough to shut down your natural production, but not enough to really overcome it in any meaningful way. So like, to give an example, androgel is it's sold as either a 1% or a 1.67% concentration. The compounded cream is 20%. So we're talking like 10 to 20 times the strength of what commercial androgel is. So it's a big difference. So that's what people need. Yeah. When we talk about compounded cream, it's not the commercial androgel that we're talking about.
Are there different varieties that people inject?
So usually, like in the United States, cypionate and enanthate are the two most common ones, but cypionate's by far the most common one. And there's really no difference between the two. I mean, supposedly the half-life of enanthate's a little bit shorter, but once you're at steady state, it's really irrelevant. And cypionate's a bit cheaper, so that's why it's most commonly prescribed.
I guess one of the challenges, so it took me like a year to get my dosage dialed in because I was way too high at first, which felt great, but I was like, I don't need to be this high. Dave was just getting jealous all the time. It was crazy. So I guess that would be a challenge, switching between the cream and the injection is to get your dosage right. Because I'm almost half, little more than half of where I started at to get down to where I'm comfortable at. And I don't need to take an estrogen blocker and I just feel good, but I'm not like overly good. You know, people aren't like, oh yeah, you're obviously on T. Like I don't get that as much anymore, except from him.
Were you getting that?
I was getting that from the guys at jiu-jitsu, like immediately. And they knew I was on it. So there was that caveat, but they were like, you're on roids. Like, you know, I was looking pretty big, I'll be honest.
Oh, so just you were gaining size.
I was gaining size, and I didn't change anything about my workouts. I work out lifting weights. I try to hit just twice a week. I don't even lift heavy, but I put on size.
Weren't you saying too, you could pretty much eat whatever you wanted?
That is one challenge that I have, right? Is that I can eat like a teenager. Yeah. So I have to actually be more careful because I don't put on body fat as much.
That's how I am too. I mean, yeah, I'm the same way. But yeah. You know, I want to talk a little bit about the size, you know, getting size and muscularity and stuff on testosterone, because that is, you know, some people do, you talked about it earlier about associating with like performance enhancing drugs and things like that. But it's not like when you're doing therapeutic testosterone, right? Bioidentical testosterone, you're getting yourself into an optimal level. You're not doing like bodybuilding like type stuff. You're not just going to blow up typically, you know, and I think a lot of people think that, but we always like to say that it gives you the results that you deserve. Yeah. Right. And, you know, like kind of, I like to associate it with like when you first start working out when you're younger. Yeah. It kind of reminds me of that, right? You know, but it's nothing crazy.
That's been like mentally been a huge thing for me working out, because I don't think I'm any slug in the gym. And granted, there's a lot of people that outwork me out there, but for the most part, when I go to the gym, I feel like I'm putting in a lot more effort than a lot of the people that I see around me. You know what I mean? I'll come out of there just drenched and just tore up and sore for 5 days. I mean, chest days on Monday, I'm sore till freaking Saturday, right? Leg days are just even worse. And I see myself just out there working so hard, and I see other people shredding down. I see other people getting bigger. And I'm like, granted, there's probably some other supplementation that's involved with some of those, but man, it is frustrating and it's hard. Like that's one of the reasons why I like the winter out here. Yeah. Because I feel like I excel, because a lot of people don't want to put in the work to go run in the snow or go outside and cold dip or do the things that are hard when it's cold and dark and everything else. So I feel like in the winter, I'm like, it's like my time, right? Yeah. Because other people aren't out there, but man, it's crazy to watch some people come in and they just, God, they kill it.
Yeah. Well, it'll be exciting to see kind of how your results progress, you know, going forward. I mean, it's just, to me, when we know all the benefits that come from having healthy, high levels of testosterone, it's like, that's where I want my levels to be at. Yeah. You know, so it's hard for me. You know, I talk with guys all the time and they're like, so many guys get on the fence, they're kind of in that middle range. And it's like, you know, it's up to you, but where do you want to be at?
Oh, that's been 100% me. Right. Yeah. And I honestly feel like we should do like a quick 15-minute follow-up on this, because so people know you're on Cypionate. Yep. Right. You're now on the cream.
I'm doing the cream now.
Okay. Yeah. So I've obviously been saying I'm not on it. I haven't been on anything. I actually start the oral pills today. They should be there pretty soon. So
excited.
There we go. You're so excited. Yeah. So I'm going to start those and see how that changes. Now, obviously, like we've talked about, I'm really not as concerned. My testosterone could be 100. It could be 900. It doesn't matter as long as I see the results and feel the results, right? Especially the mental clarity, libido, the energy, all that, the sleep, all that stuff. So I'm going on it. It would be neat to meet back up in a month or two and talk about the changes that I experienced too, just to see how that's going, because I may switch. I told you I may switch to Cypionate at some point.
Yeah.
I want to try the oral version first for various reasons, but I want to see how that works and see what changes.
It would be interesting. And I want to do that too, because like I mentioned when we were off air, that so far in the studies, it doesn't raise levels typically enough to give guys the resolution that they need to feel good. It's been more effective in women because they don't need to raise their levels as high. But so yeah, I'd be interested to see, how you feel.
How long? Because it took me, I feel like it was a solid 6 months before I started to visually see differences.
Absolutely.
So we may even want to push that out longer. I imagine, like, is there a normal amount when people start feeling good?
So I tell people 6 months. You're right on with that. Now that doesn't mean, people say to me all the time that they feel a lot sooner. I have guys that just start it and the week after they start, like, oh my God, I feel so much better. I can feel it. Maybe it's placebo. Maybe they are feeling it, but they perceive that it's real still, but they're feeling better. So they're, that's all subjective, but definitely in terms of like body composition, 6 months, I tell guys, give it a real 6 months. And that's why, we require a 6 month commitment for our patients just for that reason, because like you need to give it that time.
When are we going on our cruise? 6 months?
Yeah.
Attaboy.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. No, I'm interested too, because I am very much an extremist, especially when it comes to working out and those types of things. Even like I said, when I did those, steroids or pro hormones, whatever they were, I'm very dedicated when things get into it. If I start seeing change, it's like all of a sudden I'm like pushing away bad foods and I'm going to bed a little earlier and I'm drinking more water. And it's like, almost like it does have that effect on me where now I'm trying to put all these other things on top. So I want the top. Yeah. I want the top results.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm interested.
Can we talk about cost a little bit, or at least rough costs? Because that's a question guys ask me a lot. There's a lot of guys that I know that, their budget's kind of tight and they're like, I might want to do it, but I don't think I can afford it.
Right.
Yeah.
For shopping.
So it's, we talked about earlier with so the cheapest route, like if you were just going to get lucky, maybe your primary care doctor might be lucky enough to actually prescribe you testosterone. They're typically not going to, do much on the optimization front. A lot of those guys, it's like, okay, we'll get you into like the high normal range, which might not provide symptom resolution. What we do is, we do a 6 month commitment. It's a membership based program. So we do one monthly cost and it includes doctor's fees, hormones, testosterone, if you're on thyroid or whatever else, in one monthly fee. So most guys pay around $200 all in for everything.
Yep.
And we don't make you do blood work every 3 months or so, like a lot of, you can if you want to, but we'll do your initial blood work. We'll do a follow-up labs a couple months later. And then, depending on what we see, we'll just do labs annually at that point, unless you request them for some reason, you can do it. But kind of like you said, we're not focused so much on the number. It's more about how you feel. So after we kind of get some baseline labs, we can make a lot of adjustments just based on your signs and symptoms and how you're feeling. So it's not necessary to do labs a bunch of times throughout the year.
The question just popped in my mind. Is it dangerous to be too high? Is there risks to that?
We don't know. Okay. So there's nothing. So I will tell you, testosterone is a dose response, right? So what the studies show us is the higher the level, the higher the benefit. Now, what is that upper level? We don't know. It does. There's no literature that shows us this level is too high. Now, probably the most kind of, famous study in terms of like higher doses, there was a guy named Bazin. So the Bazin dose studies, and they took patients, they started at like 100 milligrams and went up in intervals all the way up to 600 milligrams a week of injectable testosterone. Now, for those of you guys that don't know, like a typical TRT dose would probably be like between 1 to 200 milligrams a week. So they would take guys up to 600. In that group, the guys in the 600 milligram group had the best benefits in terms of like symptom resolution, how they felt. They had the best outcomes in terms of health outcomes, like, everything they monitor, lipids, blood pressure, cholesterol, things like that. Like they had the best health outcomes at that level. So I'm not saying everyone needs to go do 600 milligrams a week. That's probably overkill, but there is we don't have an established range. Like, okay, this is okay. Once you get to this high, it's too high for you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a loaded question, but we don't know that. All we know is in every study, the levels that they show, the higher the level, the higher the benefit. So
got it.
I want my levels high.
Another question. And I hear this a lot, and I know there's a better term for it, but guys are always like, oh, I don't want to get roid rage. Is that something to worry about?
So that study, those Bazin dose studies I was just talking about, that's one of the things that they looked at was aggressiveness all the way up to the 600 milligram a week group showed no signs of added aggression. And so, a lot of that roid rage comes from the synthetics, right? And so that's what causes that. But the bioidentical testosterone has never been shown to cause anything like that.
My personal experience, even when I was very high, I didn't have, but I mean, and maybe it's a reflection on your personality, right? I'm a very chill person in general. So it didn't have that effect on me.
I think you got it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think if you're an asshole, it's going to probably make you a bigger asshole.
Yeah.
Right. But
so don't be an asshole.
Yeah, exactly.
How about cortisol? Does it have any effect on your cortisol levels? Or
cortisol?
Like that?
So that's more of an adrenal hormone. So like we use a lot of DHEA in our men. And so DHEA will oppose the cortisol a lot, but just, kind of in a roundabout way, if you're improving, if the testosterone is helping you improve your sleep habits, your exercise, things like that, like in a roundabout way, it will help improve that. It doesn't have a direct impact on it.
Why would someone want to go to someone like you face to face rather than online? Because I get constant like messages and emails of like testosterone.
Online. Like, we're going to get so much more after this.
Our
phones are listening. I guarantee it.
So I think if you're just someone that maybe wants just like prescription and to be left alone and no guidance, no, not communication, not support, I think that's kind of what a lot of those places do.
You just want it to show up to your doorstep.
Yeah, exactly.
It seems risky to me because like, obviously you're very knowledgeable about it. And I think it's important to understand what you're getting into because there's pluses and minuses to it. So I find that to be a little risky. So I was just wondering if it.
Yeah. And stay on it more too. And it's like what I always say, like we do full body hormone optimization, right? So we're going to look at your testosterone, your thyroid, your adrenals, a lot of other lab markers to kind of see what's going on. And so when I talked earlier about how symptoms of low thyroid can affect or mirror symptoms of low testosterone, like that's a big one that we'll see guys that come in from some of these clinics and they have great testosterone levels and they still feel, they're still experiencing all these symptoms. And it's like, we'll look at their thyroid and it's like, you need to get your thyroid up. And so we'll do that and it takes care of it. So it's like, if you're working with a place that just does testosterone, there's a big chance that you might be missing a lot more to the puzzle than to what you actually need.
Yep. Okay. Dude, we hit it all. Any more? Did you get it all out?
I'm good. So where can people find you?
Yeah, that's my next question.
Yeah. So our website is rev.health. So REVV.health. Same on all of our social media, rev.health as well. So that'd probably be the best way. My direct email is travin@rev.health. So
I will link that in the description so people can find you directly. I suspect Dave and I will get a lot of questions out of this podcast. So if you're thinking about it or you have questions, feel free to hit us up, drop a comment in there, and we will certainly refer people your way as well.
Yeah. And I think that's a big thing. And that's why I got linked up with Travin. It's just, there's a lot of questions. I mean, you're putting anything in your body, you want to make sure that you're getting good information. So, I've asked a lot of questions to you, to a lot of other people, just because I want to be educated and informed. I'm not one of those people that you put something in front of me and say, take this. I'm like, all right. So I think that's a big thing. There's so much information and testosterone is really developing, right? Like, I mean, it's a newer industry. I'm sure it's been around for a long time, but commercially it's becoming more and more. And, going into some of these other clinics has been something that's been a huge turnoff to me. Because like I said, when I walk in and you've already pulled my prescription without looking at anything, you're ready to go. I have a question about that because I also want somebody, I would love to come to you and say, here's how I feel. Here's the things that I have. And for you to say, hey, testosterone might not be right for you. That's what I want in terms of people that treat me, as people to be willing to say this might actually not be the right thing for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, Travin, thank you. That was incredible.
Thank you guys.
That was good.
Great.
We'll drop all the info in the notes so you guys can find it. And once again, thanks for listening. We appreciate you. See you next time.
Right on.
Cool.